Alrighty then, so one of the hottest topics in gaming nowadays seems to be the ballooning costs of game development from studios at Sony and Microsoft. You see this echoed and reflected in the massive amount of layoffs. However, one thing that people don't really seem to be talking about too much is how Nintendo seems to be at the forefront of not laying off a bunch of employees. Who would have thought, right? Actually, in fact, Nintendo seems to be pretty good in terms of retaining employees, and actually they're the third, I guess, best ranked company to work for in all of Japan. That's not shabby. There's a lot of good companies here. But one thing that's really interesting is at a recent investors meeting, Shinya Takahashi and Shigeru Miyamoto were talking a little bit about the successor of the Switch. But on top of that, they were also talking about keeping the costs down. We continue refining our products until we are confident that we have created something that our consumers will be satisfied with, said Miyamoto. With that in mind, what is important is to find ideas that are worth honing, and this has not changed since the era of the Nintendo Entertainment System. I mean, yeah, that's true. A lot of their design philosophy has remained consistent and has remained the same. There have been a lot of aesthetic and design changes, but I think the core values that make Nintendo have been there since the beginning. Everyone has different interests, so we cannot make sweeping statements about what ideas are worth pursuing. However, one thing that we are sure about is that it should be something which has not existed in the past. The more you polish something that has never existed before, the more value it brings. And yeah, that's true. Doing something over and over again is an easy way to make a lot of money, and some people want more of the same. But Nintendo has kind of shied away from that. And look at things like Super Mario Bros. Yes, you can argue that New Super Mario Bros. They look the same on the surface and whatever. But, there are some changes there, power-up-wise and level-wise, right? And even the original Mario games, there was clear graphical differences, clear gameplay mechanical differences as well. And even with Zelda, you had the first game, which was this overhead view, and then the second one, which was a side-scroller. And so it says that as a result, Nintendo aims to nurture developers who take this unique concept to heart and allocate funds as necessary and release games only after we are confident in the product. Wow, that's another one. Go figure, right? People always talk about day one patches, day one bugs. You never really hear about that from the Nintendo side of things, do you? It's pretty much always good when it comes out. Did Mario Wonder have any game-breaking bugs? I don't think so. Miyamoto says that it's possible to create appealing products based on intriguing ideas without incurring significant costs, and this is huge. It really is, because in this era we have games that cost $400 million, like Concord, and flopped completely. And there's a lot of other games in Sony now that are costing hundreds of millions of dollars. In the end, these games are going to sell well, but at what cost? The development, production, all of it balloons out of control. A lot of these games end up not doing so well, they don't end up recouping their budget. Or if they do well, it sets a bad precedent, in my opinion. Anyways, I can't speak for everyone else here on the channel, but me personally, I think that you increase the size of these game studios, and as soon as something goes wrong, boom. That's where your layoffs come in. Miyamoto continues that we believe that not all products require large costs. Even in the case of video games with the current technology, it is possible to create fun games with a small number of developers in a short period of time. We believe it is important not to lose sight of this perspective. As if I couldn't love this guy anymore. Seriously, yes. Why are all of these games, and a lot of them are good, don't get me wrong, but they have these multiple studios working on them, hundreds and hundreds, maybe upwards of 1,000 employees working on a single game. Yes, they do produce fantastic results sometimes, or even maybe a good majority of the time. But let's be realistic here, it's just not easy to increase the size of these teams, because what happens? Production ends up taking longer, ends up costing more money, and then in the end the players get upset. There's a common meme that's going around how PlayStation doesn't have a lot of games out and that PlayStation isn't doing well and blah 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 blah. You really can't say that about Nintendo, and people will say, well, a lot of Wii U games are on there. Yeah, but a lot of not Wii U games are on there too. Quite a few, and I'm sure if you took away the Wii U ports, you're still going to have a very healthy, vibrant, unique, diverse library, minus all those crappy games on the eShop. And then the corporate director Shinya Takahashi, who's also on the directs, he chimed in, I believe unique titles that are small in scale but worth polishing can be created by expanding on the ideas of a small number of developers rather than spending large sums of money on every game. While overall research and development costs are rising, there are certain products for which expenses remain relatively stable depending on our approach. I'm glad that there's a shared perspective and a shared idea here at the company, because that's really crucial. When you have the corporate director who's doubling as the senior managing executive officer saying this is huge and it's a very positive sign. Unique ideas don't have to be drummed up by 1,000 people. If anything, then you have the problem with too many cooks in the kitchen and the whole thing becomes a mess. Koshioda, a senior executive officer and corporate director, added that the merging of home console and handheld consoles for Switch allowed Nintendo to integrate its development environments, which will be continuing with the Switch 2. He says, "Because we are already familiar with Nintendo Switch, maintaining a similar basis for development environments in the future will allow us to carry over the experience we've already built, which should lead to a reduction in research and development costs over time." And there we go. People complain a lot about the Switch being underpowered, it wasn't good enough. Yes, some games aren't as pretty or some third-party titles don't run as well, but you're trying to tell me that most Nintendo games don't absolutely run phenomenally? No, I don't think so. They are very well made, well polished, well put together. And I mean, that's why you're buying a Nintendo system, right? Really is to mostly play Nintendo games, and personally speaking, if the other games work, it's kind of just a bonus. Although, that said, you have magical wizards like a Panic Button who are porting over Doom games, and those run pretty dang well on a Switch. It's phenomenal, so I think having these limits is kinda good. When we have these theoretically unlimited specs, or very, very high spec consoles, it just seems like the cost, the cycles, everything just gets out of control. Nintendo always, once again, proving that they are one step ahead of the game. People might not like it, but this is one of the reasons that Nintendo is in the position that they're in. With the Switch 2 coming out, it's only going to get better. We might be hearing some information pretty soon. But what do you all think? Is Nintendo doing the right thing? Do you think they need to increase their power? The Switch needs to be better? What do you all think? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks again, as always, for watching another Power Star Japan production. See you all in the next one. Take care.